Hey guys, thanks for tuning into Elevate Church online experience. And if this is your first time joining us, an extra welcome. If you've already subscribed, that's fantastic. If you haven't, like and subscribe down the bottom and maybe share it with your friend. A key thing we do every week is worship. We'd love you to get involved. The lyrics will be on the screen.
There is righteousness, only Jesus. Who opens up our eyes, only Jesus. From our sins, only Jesus. Who's coming back again, only Jesus. Who holds the keys to life, only Jesus. There's no one like you, you stand alone. No greater love was ever shown. You are our rescue, only Jesus. High and exalted upon your throne, no greater name was ever known. You are our refuge, only Jesus. Yeah, you are holy. We bring our praise to you, holy. In our hands we raise to you, holy. There's no one like you, God. Yes, you are holy. We bring our praise to you, holy. In our hands we raise to you, holy. There's no one like you, God. There's no one like you. You stand alone. No greater love was ever shown. You are our rescue, only Jesus. High and exalted upon your throne, no greater name was ever known. You are our refuge, only Jesus.
This week's message for All the Feels is about hurt with Mark Pomeroy. We hope you can take something from the message.
Well, hey there to our Elevate family. Great to have you with us for this third week of our series, All the Feels. And this series, if you've missed the first couple of weeks, it's all about managing emotions that, in a particular set of emotions, that if you let them manage you, rather than you manage them, they'll take you to places that are less than God's best. So we're zooming in on 4 emotions. I'll cover that off in a second. But have you noticed in our current culture Emotions seem to be more front and center than ever before. Things like offense and anger and fear and worry. And look, I'm not entirely sure whether it's that we're experiencing emotions more than ever before, or we have new platforms to express emotions that didn't exist several years ago. But one thing that I have noticed is the cultural momentum shift towards people being led by their emotions, being managed by their emotions. And so what we're doing with this series is building capacity and putting tools on the table that will help us and equip us and give us the ability to manage our emotions and not have our emotions manage us. I am aware, though, that there's a couple of sticking points. One sticking point is this question is it even possible? You know, someone says, well, I'm just an emotional person, or I just grew up in that particular environment. It's possible. It's possible to manage your emotions and not have them manage you. But then there's a second question, like, why should I bother? Well, a couple of reasons. One is, and I mentioned this right at the top, that there's a certain set of emotions that if you let them manage you, they will take you to places that are less than God's best. And another reason, and we set this up in week 1 of this series, and we've been talking about leadership over the last couple of months, is in this concept of 360-degree leadership. Now, I don't think he invented it, but John Maxwell certainly popularized this concept. In fact, he has a book all about 360-degree leadership. Now, if you missed me unpacking that, go back to week 1 and you can get a bigger handle on that. But certainly the thing that this series really speaks to in particular, but not exclusively, but in particular, is our ability to manage ourselves, our ability to lead ourselves well. And John Maxwell actually says that two things. Number one, if you don't manage yourself well, you will forfeit the ability to lead everyone around you. And secondly, leading ourselves is approximately 50% of leadership. So leading ourselves in this area of emotions is absolutely critical to allow us to build influence and to live the life, the best life that God's intended for us. So here's an important principle to understand, that when something triggers one of these potentially damaging emotions, when something triggers that, you have two options. Option one is to react. And if you react, that's the emotion managing you. The other option is to respond. And that's where you will instead manage that emotion and not have it manage you. It's really a question of who's in charge. And the answer to the question who's in charge will then answer the question, where's it going to take you? Where's it going to lead? What's it going to lead to? So in week 1, we talked about managing anger, acknowledging that it's possible to Hulk out. But Bruce Banner, he's the first to admit that he has no control over the big green man coming out. But you and I do. Last week, Steve Hall talked about managing worry, that worry is concern gone too far. And that worrying about tomorrow, the danger is that we're actually carrying 2 days at once. The stresses and the burden of today and the stresses and the burden of tomorrow, much of which we don't have control over. Next week, we've got our great friend Rob Mason. He's going to teach about managing fear. So you're going to want to be here for that. You're going to want to bring a friend along for that. Today, I want to actually talk about managing hurt. And I dare to say this is one of the things that we pretty much all have in common at certain varying levels. I mean, look, there's minor hurts. You just finished watching Tenet and you're more confused than ever. And you're pretty hurt that there's 2.5 hours of your life that Christopher Nolan owes you and you'll never get it back. These minor hurts, they're pretty easy to get over, pretty easy to heal, pretty easy to move forward, probably don't even leave scars. Then there's the category of major hurts, and these are the ones that I want to talk about today. The loss of a job that you loved and that you did nothing wrong to cause you to lose that job. The betrayal of a friend. The death of a family member that maybe has gone too soon. The implosion of a marriage or some other significant relationship. These cause major hurts, and I know you know that. Listen to the words that these potential scenarios tee off with. Loss of a job, betrayal of a friend, death of a family member, implosion of a relationship, loss, betrayal, death, implosion. Naturally, those sorts of things are going to leave us with open wounds. And it's vital that you and I, when we experience these sorts of hurts and are left with open wounds, it's vital that we attend to those open wounds. Don't ignore them. Attend to them. Don't learn to live with them. Don't learn to put up with them. Don't adjust. Don't accept them as the new normal. No, we've got to attend to them, because if we don't, then we'll actually be led by the pain that caused those open wounds. And that pain will start to bleed out into other areas of our life. It'll start to bleed over into the people in our sphere of influence. We'll start to mistrust people as our default. We'll start to be cynical towards situations as our default. And all of those things come into play if we allow the emotion of hurt to manage us and rather instead manage hurt. Now, for me, one of the most painful experiences I've ever had in my life happened about 12 years ago. My wife and I had moved interstate to lead a church. A new opportunity had opened up there, and we went all in. We sold the house here. We bought a house there right by the church building, and we bought a one-way ticket. We were there, and we were going to give it everything we had to make it work. Well, 1 year later, the board fired me. And it was pretty painful because, as I said, we'd gone all in. And for the year that we were there, we'd given more than, I think, would have been expected of us. We later came to learn that for the last 9 of those 12 months that we were there, that the board had been meeting with the former senior pastor of the church, and they called it dinner, but we discovered that it was me that was on the menu. And the story's got more moving parts to it than that. But look, what I came away with was a collection of very painful open wounds. I had came away with the pain of betrayal. These board members, we'd had them in our home on multiple occasions, had meals with them, had laughs with them, gotten to know their extended families, to discover that they were meeting behind closed doors. Enormous feeling of betrayal, disappointment that we'd gone all in and this hadn't worked out the way that we'd hoped. Sadness because we'd started to see some growth and new life in the church, and we were building new relationships and new friendships, and we were going to have to move on from them. Anger that people didn't have the integrity to be upfront throughout their concerns and questions. Frustration that things didn't work out, frustration about, what maybe we could have done differently. Loss of hope, 12 months in, where to from here? I mean, we'd bought a one-way ticket and we'd gone all in, and where to from here? What's next, God? Chances are some of you can relate to this because of loss or betrayal or relational implosion or things that have caused you hurt. You can relate to this, that you come away on the far side of the circumstances with enormously painful open wounds. So I want to bring some great news to the table today, starting with the reality that Jesus was no stranger to emotions. We've kind of, in too many church circles, we've kind of sterilized Jesus. And yet, when you read through the biographical accounts of Jesus, you'll discover that he, through his life, was recorded as demonstrating and expressing 39 different emotions. Now, I didn't even know there was 39 emotions until I married into an Italian family and discovered that you can actually experience 39 emotions in a 1 hour, the first hour of Sunday lunch. So I know it's possible. And Jesus, coming to earth in human form, experienced and expressed the range of emotions, the good, the bad, and the ugly that you and I go through in our lifetime and our circumstances. So what I want to do today in the short time we have left together is just zero in on how Jesus responded to a particular person who was in enormous pain from a very fresh open wound. And my hope is that as you see how Jesus responded to her, that you'll be encouraged that he, the same Jesus, who's the same yesterday, today, and forever, that he's willing and able to respond to you in whatever hurt you're feeling now and or into the future. So look, grab your second device, pop open the Bible app to Luke chapter 7. Luke was one of Jesus' 4 biographers, and we're going to drop into a slice of history where Jesus had just preached probably his most famous message. It's now kind of typically referred to as the Sermon on the Mount. And he'd wrap that thing up, and together with his closest followers and a crowd, he was moving on to new towns to extend God's kingdom. And Luke writes this: not long after that, Jesus went to the village Nain. His disciples were with him, along with quite a large crowd. And as they approached the village gate, they met a funeral procession. A woman's only son was being carried out for burial, and the mother was a widow. When Jesus saw her, his heart broke. Jesus stumbled across a woman who'd already lost her husband at some time in the past, and now had lost her only son. And in fact, it was almost certain that this funeral procession was happening the very next day after the son had died. They didn't have the facilities that we have today for preserving a body for, a dead body for an extended period of time. So often the funerals and the burials would happen the very next day. So, probably this widow is less than 24 hours into losing her son. So I think that's like the epitome of a very fresh, deeply painful, open wound. And Luke records that when he says, when Jesus saw her, and it's like, that's, at face value, that's kind of a weird thing to say because, Jesus would have seen everyone. But Luke's highlighting the fact that Jesus zeroed in on the widow. Jesus identified her and prioritized her. His attention went to her. She became his number one thing on his agenda in that moment because he recognized how deeply her heart was broken. And in that moment, we get to see that Jesus' heart breaks when our heart breaks. He's not aloof and disinterested, even when you feel disappointed and devalued and hurt. Jesus notices. Now, other translations use the phrase, he was filled with compassion towards the widow. And this expression, filled with compassion, it's not surface level. It's not like Jesus was mildly taken aback when he saw the widow. Or, Jesus felt a little perturbed when he saw the widow. It's actually this, it actually is intended to highlight an incredibly evocative response that Jesus felt. A gut-wrenching emotion that Jesus felt right to the very core of his being. And it wasn't the first time he'd felt that emotion, and it wasn't the last time he felt that emotion. And as you read through his biographies, you'll see that every single time it's recorded that Jesus was filled with compassion, he did something. He responded, and ultimately he changed the game for the people in play. So Jesus said to the widow, "Don't cry," which again is like, it sounds insensitive, but here's the thing. He went over and touched the coffin. And the pallbearers stopped. Now, it's important to understand a couple of things. Number one, it wouldn't have been a coffin like the ones we may be used to in the developed world, a wooden coffin closed. It would have likely been more like a stretcher on some kind of wheels, or just even carried out on a stretcher. And oftentimes the body was exposed. Secondly, in that culture, in the Jewish culture, the religious system had been set up to derive the conclusion that if you or anyone was to touch a dead body, then in that moment you would be rendered ceremonially unclean. Or, by the way, even if you touched somebody or something that had come in contact with a dead body, you would be rendered ceremonially unclean. And so, the pallbearers would have known this. So when Jesus went over to touch the coffin, it's no surprise that the pallbearers stopped, because this would have been scandalous. But here's the great news about it. Jesus crossed a line. See, the reason that's good news is because religion sets up lines. Religion puts things and people in a box and says, stay inside the box, color inside the lines. It's about rule keeping. It's about what you should and shouldn't do. And it's all about these certain lines that have been set up. But whilst religion sets up lines, Jesus crosses lines. See, he's more interested in doing the right thing than doing things right. And that's a key distinction that is incredibly encouraging to learn about Jesus. And then one more takeaway, let me throw this in as a bit of bonus content, is Jesus was he was just in the world at that moment. He was moving from A to B with his followers in a crowd. He didn't know the funeral was happening. And he could have just passed on by, kept going for the so-called bigger purposes of the kingdom. But this is just another example that highlights that Jesus didn't just come into the world. He also wants to come into your world of hurt, your world of pain, your world of disappointment, your world of loss, your world of betrayal, your world of relational implosion, that your pain matters to Jesus, that his heart breaks when your heart breaks. And he said to the dead boy, "Young man, I tell you, get up." And the dead son sat up and began talking. Hello. Jesus presented him to his mother. The widow had no doubt assumed that that was the end of her life. That was the end of her story. She had no economic prospects because her husband was dead and now her son was dead. The boy obviously was dead, so it's safe to assume that that was the end of the story for him. But when Jesus enters your life, he enters it wanting to write a next chapter, and he gets to say what and when that happens. He presents you with fresh opportunities. And so, we start with open wounds. We start with pain and hurt that's been caused by something and someone, but that doesn't have to be your story. That doesn't have to be the end of your story. That doesn't have to be the thing that defines you for the rest of your life. That doesn't have to be the thing that manages you for the rest of your life. In fact, Jesus wants to heal our open wounds. And ultimately, by the way, then position us and call us to be used by him to help and heal other people's wounds. You know, I know for me, since my experience of being fired from church leadership, any single time I hear about one of the friends that I have in my sphere or in my network who are church leaders, whenever I hear about one of them getting their tie caught in the shredder, I am onto them straight away. I'm calling them, I'm messaging them, and I'm saying to them, hey, I heard about what happened. How can I help? And I'm qualified to do that. I don't have to, I don't even have to go into their situation and say, oh, that's terrible. I can't possibly understand what you're going through. You know, I'm positioned now because of the hurt I experienced and the healing that I've experienced to have the scars to prove it. And scars are a sign that what the devil designed to take you out didn't work. You're still here, you're still going, you're still moving. And so I can go to these church leaders who have had things blown up around them and say, I've actually got a pretty clear handle on what you're feeling, what you're going through. And I want to bring some hope and some encouragement to you that this is not the final chapter in your journey. I also have this experience of hurt and healing has also put me in a very powerful position of connecting with de-churched people. This is this category of people who were once a part of a church and for whatever reason were blown out of the water, blown out of the church. And I will reach out to them any and every opportunity I get. We've built a church that places a large emphasis on embracing de-churched people that come in. Come as you are. I mean, don't stay as you are, but come as you are. And we're gonna embrace you. We're gonna invest into you. We're gonna be part of your healing journey. No judgment, because you don't have to let your hurt define you. And a church blowing you up isn't the same as Jesus discarding you. Now, I'm aware that for some of you it might be too soon in your hurt journey. It might be too soon, too recent, too painful right now. The wound might be too exposed right now for you to be thinking about helping others. I understand that. You know, there's a reason why when we fly, the safety briefing says that in the event of an emergency and the face masks drop, put your mask on first before helping others. There's a reason for that. Absolutely. So don't feel like you have to ignore your healing journey for the sake of others if it's too soon and your wounds still run too deep. However, keep it as a long-term goal, something to say, God, I'd love for you to repurpose my experience when it's in scars mode to help others who may be going through the same thing as me. But for some of you, you've got scars. The healing's happened. The scars prove that you're still going, and Jesus wants to open up the next chapter for you to help others. And so I just want to invite you, it's go time. There's a world of hurting people that God can use you to be an instrument of healing because of your experience. So this is what happened after Jesus touched the coffin, spoke to the boy, presented him alive again to his mother. The people all around, they realized they were in a place of holy mystery, that God was at work among them. Undeniable, obviously. They were quietly worshipful and then noisily grateful, calling out among themselves, God is back, looking to the needs of his people. The news of Jesus spread all throughout the country. And that can be your next chapter. And that can be the next chapter that you jumpstart for somebody else. So look forward to that. Be open to that. Ask God for opportunities to be used that way. Now, just a final word. For those of you that, this is kind of pushed on an open wound, and just even listening to this, you're sort of feeling both encouraged but also reminded of the pain. In a second, Molly's going to tell you how we can pray, and we want to pray with you because we're on this journey with you, journey of healing and restoration and repurposing.
That was a pretty serious topic. We'd love to pray for you. If you want to submit a prayer, go to the Elevate Church AU app and submit a prayer, and we'll definitely pray for you this week. If you've already given, we thank you so much. And if you've been thinking about it, take the opportunity today. The links are down below. It's been so awesome connecting with you today, and we thank you so much for tuning in. Don't forget to tune in for next week's experience of All the Feels.